So hello. Today I want to talk about a little bit about documentation for Microsoft, and here you see the URL. This is the old URL, means in docs. And then at Microsoft.com, and then you see I want to have the American version, US version, and then I want to go to OneDrive because I want to talk about OneDrive and I want to talk about group policies. That was the old one. So first I have two things that will happen. First, the change is I think 14 days ago to learn at Microsoft.com, and now they change it again. Not only that in OneDrive, because OneDrive, and I said it as before, is now SharePoint. No, it was SharePoint, but let's see. It will automatically do and translate that. So if I go there, you see now it's in Learn, and then we have ENOS, this is American version, and we have SharePoint, no longer OneDrive, and use core policy. Yes, use OneDrive policies to control sync settings. That's correct, and I have also a German version, Verwenden von OneDrive Richtlinien. But I want to talk about a little bit about this stuff, and I go a little bit in the English version. Here you find all group policies, about 40, and they are sorted by the string ID. And do you know what string ID is? You see that here. That's a string ID. Let's start the show. So this is tip number 4, and we talk about a string ID in group policies. What does it mean? So you have to look for that. First, we have to say what's happened in there. So the thing is that the string ID will show on a different website. And the string ID is very important if you have more than one language and to look for that. And we talk about the Microsoft documentation, and therefore we will see what happened. So normally you have OneDrive group policy that comes with each version, again, new and you, that's different from the other stuff, because Microsoft changed the rule a little bit, and with each new OneDrive version, in a production each month or so, inside 1 week, the third ring later on, but you see there comes something with it, and there is 2 files with it. That's a OneDrive ADMX and that's a OneDrive ADML. So you see that in your installation file, and you see that here, that you see that's a OneDrive ADMX, that's only one. You have one, that's a code. And then you have different languages. The US version is here, OneDrive ADML, and then you see the different versions for Germany, for Spain, French, Hungary, and Italy, and so on. So that's a different ones if you have to change the language, and therefore it's a description of that. Again, the ADMX, the code. That will shift you the database for Microsoft with little information that the group policy will work. So therefore, that's the first thing. The next thing is we have to look for that if we look a little bit more in detail. So normally the Windows product group will have to do that for the people. They built the OneDrive ADMX file. And that's different. That's different because Microsoft, the OneDrive group, want to have some functionality, and the Windows group has to deploy and develop that stuff. So that's the first thing. And you find that information, if it's ready, a description of that in the English version. And then the steps comes up, and the steps is translation. That will do also the Windows product group. So you see the first one, we translate the English version to Germany. Now we have 2 versions. And the second one is English to the Spanish version, and so on. How many there will have. So that's the first thing. And that was a good thing, but sometimes Microsoft has in the past has to do it different. Makes it not so easy to say what's going on. They do it in a different way, and they do it in that they give the ADML and the ADMX date and comes to Microsoft. They have the group policy, they make the description, but then they do the description and change it and translate it in different version. Again, they translate it in a manual part. That means, okay, now you think that's the same. No. People, now we have different parts for the language and different parts from the product group. So we have to look for them in a thing. Only one part has to be the English version and nothing more. The other ones we can and we had to display. In the old days, they fail completely because two different translate teams have to do that. So therefore we have to do and have to rethink about that. So in the ADML, that's a file, we see all this stuff, and I show you the US version. So I take only one of the group of the functionality here outside, means use OneDrive files on demand. You know that. And there is a string ID. That's in the ADML file. If you look for that, you have a string ID that called files on demand enabled. That's a string ID. And you see, this is a description. You found it here with a local group policy editor. This information, use OneDrive files on demand. You find also here. That's a two information. And if you do something, enable or disable or something else with this and point it out, it will write some information into the database. So that's okay. But now we change it a little bit. We change from the ADML US to the ADML DE. Oh, it's happened. So the string ID is the same, one files on demand enable, but the translation is OneDrive Dateien bei Bedarf verwenden. See it here, and here the blue, the green text is also here. So going back, you see the difference. It's only the translation. The ID is for all languages the same. But first I have to say, okay, the string ID is normally was shown, I think 3 or 4 weeks ago in docs.microsoft.com. Then Microsoft changed the rules to learn.microsoft.com. Okay, and we have to look it different. First to change it from docs.microsoft.com, it comes to OneDrive in this version, but with the learn. That's the first one. Now they change it completely, not longer in OneDrive, it's now below SharePoint. Yes, we and you and I know OneDrive is part of SharePoint. So you can have it and can say still the same. docs.microsoft.com/ANUS, that's American version, or DEDE for the German version. OneDrive group policy. It will change immediately to learn.microsoft.com. The American version, SharePoint, and use group policy. So if you look manually in this stuff, it's not so easy to find it because you do not find it with OneDrive anymore. It's part of SharePoint. I have here my file I have prepared a little bit that comes with the program installations. It's a 64-bit version. If you found that, you can look for that. Click on that, go to settings, and you find the information. When you find the information, here is a 64-bit version. The 64-bit version is in program files, so there are different locations, but you have to look where your OneDrive is installed. It can also on the user, and it's also 32-bit. They are different. So therefore, you have to look for that. The last one is this one, and if you see, there are so many files and folders. We have to look for the first one. That's ADM. That is these group policies, and I show you this stuff. And if I open a OneDrive, I open it with a notepad, this one, just once, and you see that's a description of all we want to have. And here you find the disable personal sync, that's a string ID, and that's the English version. If we open that in a German version, the string ID is the same, but here it is translated. but not in the second part. So if you go to the internet again and see what happens, and then you find the information, I have opened it for you. So list of policy by string ID, allow tenant list, or if I showed you, disable autoconfig, whatever you want, all is there, and you find here the right translation. If you go to the German version, look here, ENUS, and you find the German version, DEDE, you find the France version with FR, that's the same, and you see here, that's translated, and you see here that was automatically for the mark translated. That's okay. But it's not okay if you look for the thing. That is not available. Zeichenfolgen ID is the ID, but it never has Zeichenfolgen. It has the same name. But anyway, you find the right version here, and you find the second, the translated version is only once translated. Now you find all the information. So therefore you have to look for this list if you have another version or a second version and you work with them. Look for these lists in there, first in the English version or in the German version, and you find the string ID there, and you now know what's happened. It's only for this side, the OneDrive policies we have there. For the 40 policies we have in there, they are translated now correctly. It was a long story short, and I hope you feel free. That was good information for you, and I say follow me on this channel and give me some remarks or questions in the notes. Thank you so much.